Hey guys, welcome back. This time I want to talk to you guys about working between Clo3d and Daz Studio. And this tutorial is going to show you how to bring anything you make in Clo3d back across to Daz for any rendering or scene creation that you want to do. If you guys like this kind of content, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. It's a big help. Leave your comments down below and check the link in the description for Discord if you want to get in touch, or for Patreon if you guys want file shares, additional downloads and that kind of thing. Go check out Patreon. So for now, let's just get right into it and I'll explain how we work between Clo3d and Daz. So this is a scene I built in Daz. I've just brought in like a background scene from something that I've downloaded, and then I've set up the avatar and then built the garments inside Clo3d. So this is just the scene I've created. You can get some quite nice results out of Daz in terms of rendering, but it does take a bit longer than using something like Blender when you've optimized it a bit better. But for now, I'll just talk you through this workflow, as the result can be quite nice, as we see in these examples here. I'll show you some of the renders as well, as this might take a little minute to render out. This is quite a nice example of something that I managed to render in Daz, so the result can be quite good. So let's start off in Daz. We want to set up our avatar and bring everything into Clo for the creation of the garments, and then bring everything back again into Daz. So let's open that base scene. So this is what I'm going to start off with in Daz. I've got my avatar. She's in the walking pose that I want her in for the final render in the end. There's two things I need to export from here to get going in Clo. So the first thing is this avatar in this walking pose. So I would go File, Export my avatar, choose my output location. So call this female walking, then click Save. I want to set the scaling to 1 centimeter because it's the same in Clo and Daz. So most of these settings I'm going to leave the same. If you've not got this set to Daz Studio, just drop this box down and click Daz Studio. The rest you can leave as it is and click Accept. Then if you want to reset this after you've posed it into your whatever pose you want to work with, right click on parameters, go to 0 and click 0 figure pose and click restore. So now I've got like an A pose or a T pose that I can work with inside Clo that's going to be a lot easier. And then I can just go File, Export, and do the same thing again to export this pose. If you want to save these poses, you can always go File, Save As, and then you can save as a pose preset. You can save shaping presets if you want to save the size of your avatar. And this will just create some files in Daz that you can then import back into to get your avatar back into a specific pose. So but now we have this kind of empty scene with just the avatar in the correct pose. And let's see how we bring this together in Clo to start modeling our garments. So here we are in Clo, we want to import our avatar. So I'm just going to drag in my T-pose avatar, just drag her over here. I'm going to add the avatar. I'm going to set the unit to Daz Studio as centimeters because we're working in centimeters. The rest of this I can leave as it is. Do not check align bottom to ground. Uncheck this. If it's checked by default, it's going to mess things up later, so just don't do it. Make sure that's the only thing that we're really looking at this point, and click OK. So our avatar is now imported to the correct scale. We know she's the right scale because she looks it. If you want to check, just draw a rectangle over your avatar in the 2D space. Press Shift and Z, and then you can see the height. So she is 182 centimeters tall, which is like 6 foot. So this is what we want. Notice she doesn't have shoes or hair or anything because that's just going to get in the way inside of Clo. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to keep her like with no accessories or hair at this point. The thing we want to do now is make our garment. So obviously I've already made my garment, and this is like this video is not about making this garment, it's about the import process. So let's take a look. So I've got my garment here, everything's in T-pose. You know, I've made as much detailing as I want at this point and can simulate this. Take a look. We want to transfer this now into our, walking pose, our more dynamic pose. So I'm just going to do what I did before and drag this across. So drag my walking pose in, save at this point if you need to. At this point, I'm not going to do. I'm going to add the avatar, but as a morph target. So drop this object type down and choose morph target. Set a number in this that's higher than 20, I would say, because that's how many frames is going to transition from one post to the other. So I left this at 24. The scaling we can leave as it is because we have the same scale on both of these exports, and then we can click OK. And that will now transfer our garment into a nice walking pose. And then we can finish off our work inside Clo3d. So I'm just going to open up my finalized Clo file and show you how I got this ready for export. So this is my posed garment. Everything's finished at this point. I'm happy with the drape of this. I'm happy with the way it's moving. I'm happy with this, how it looks. And this is now ready for me to export into wherever I want. So I took this originally into Substance Painter and textured it there. If you're texturing stuff in Clo, that's fine as well. We have the same process for importing everything, but if you make your textures in Substance, they'll just come from there. The main thing to notice is how we set this up in our UV editor. So if you go to the top right of the screen and choose UV editor, I've set this garment up in a way that it works across 6 tiles. So if we look here, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These pieces are for the skirt, and then all these pieces are for the jacket, the upper part. But I've split this across, multiple tiles to get a really good texture resolution on this. When we bring this into Daz, we're going to have to make a couple of changes, but for now we can just export this as it is. And then bring this into Blender to make a couple of adjustments. If you don't want to work with Blender, then I would suggest that at this point now, you fix your materials. So this is basically like one set of materials. Like we have denim, and then I have this additional piece of fabric on the bottom. When we're inside Daz isn't going to read UDIMs like 1 to 6. It's going to just read each material. So we want this to be one material. We want this to be a second material. These sleeves here, we want this to be a third material. So you could just start to copy your denim, make some iterations of that. And then, these pieces you say you want to be this denim, you can change that fabric, and so on and so forth. But the idea is that each tile has its own material, because that's the easiest way for us to work inside Daz. So let's export this and I'll show you how we fix it up in Blender. I'm just going to delete those extra materials. So for now, we can export this as an OBJ. And let's see where to put it. So let's call this thick centimeters Blender, because we're going to take this to Blender just so I know where to find this file. So this is how we're going to export it. Click save. I don't want the avatar. I want all the patterns. I want the graphics and trims. I want it to be a single object. I want in this instance to use a thick export. I need unified UV coordinates, so make sure you check this box. At this point, I don't want to export the textures. We can just uncheck these boxes. We want the scaling to be Daz Studio, so centimeters, 100%. And then the rest of this we can leave as it is. So just click OK, and this will export our object for us. So now this is exported, I'll jump into Blender and quickly explain the few things we need to tweak. So here we are in Blender. I'm just going to press A to select everything and X to delete these default items. Then we're going to go to import OBJ, and then we're going to navigate to our folder. Should be here. And then we're going to look under the thing that we just exported. So this one here, thick centimeters Blender, and I'm going to import that. When I import this, you're not going to see anything, and that reason for that is because it's really big. If you zoom out, this is imported like 100 times bigger, and the reason for that is the scaling. So this is now 135 meters tall, which is wild. That's because we exported it as centimeters and we imported it into into Blender which is it's set to meters. So for every centimeter, it's created a meter. We can easily fix that with the scaling here. So just select your object, go to scale, set this to 0.01, and then for all the axes, this should fix our scaling. It's now 1.35 meters tall, and if I view my selected object, this should be kind of the right scale now. So if we look under materials, we will have a few materials that we need to check on. So for now, if I look in the material preview mode and just give these a color, we have one for the denim, we have one for the fabric on the bottom, and then we have one for the buttons, it looks like. Right. Let's look at this in the UV editor. So in the UV mode, we have the same layout as in Clo. So I'm in edit mode when I'm in UV, this edit mode up here. And if I press A on the keyboard to select all my mesh, I will be able to see all my UV islands laid out like this. What we want to do now is just make sure that like each of these tiles has its own set of materials. And that's quite easy for us to do if we turn on this linked button up here. So this says UV sync selection. Select that button and then we'll see the UVs on one side and we'll see the mesh on the other. And then we want to look at our material options here. If you want to start to delete and adjust these, you can't do it in edit mode. You might have to jump back into object mode. And what I would say is just delete everything. Make a new one called material 001 and let's set this to blue as an example. Let's jump back into edit mode. Select everything on our first tile over here, like this. And then just assign material 1, click assign. And then if we go back into object mode and we look at this in material preview on the top right, I think it's gone blue. Let's just add in some more materials. We need 6 altogether because we've got 6 tiles. So if I look at this in edit mode, first tile is going to be material 1 and then the last tile is going to be material 6. So let's just add new materials into all of these slots. So we have 6 and then just give them an arbitrary kind of color identifier. So just doesn't matter what they are, just so we can visualize this a bit better. Pink. Let's do yellow here. Right. So now we have this done. We can select the first one, choose assign, and then we can choose the second tile here. Just drag and select everything on the second tile. Go to material 2, click assign. Do the same for the third one. Material 3, click assign. And then if we jump into object mode, we should see that we're starting to section this off by different materials. So I'll just finish this up in edit mode. Material 5 here. Assign. Actually, no, that was for assign. And then 5 for one part of the skirt. And then 6 for the other. So this should now mean that each of our UV tiles has its own material assigned to it, which should make this a lot easier to work with, I think. My first one is not correct. Let's just check that. Tile 1, material 1, assign. Let's see. Okay, so this is sectioned off in a pretty good way now. We can take this now into Daz and start to apply our textures to this. So if we want to bring this back in, I'm just going to have to export this again now we've adjusted our materials. I'm going to reset this scaling back to 1 because we know that is the right scaling for Daz Studio. So now we've set this up with different materials. Go to File, Export, OBJ, go to our folder, and then let's call this correct materials. And just as good practice in Blender, just click include selection only so it doesn't export everything in your scene, it just exports the selected thing, and click export object. So this is now ready for us to import into our Daz Studio scene. So just to like explain this process a bit better, I guess, if you want to come directly out of Clo, like this already has some material texture in it, we can bake these materials out. So I can click bake textures. I'm going to choose my folder, which is going to be here. I can go to new, call this Clo bake, and I can save everything in here and we'll call it denim dress. So if we're going straight out of Clo, we want to export the textures first. So here we want all the tiles. We want the diffuse, normal, roughness, metallic if you've got metallic information on this as well. Select the textures that you want. add the output folder, and then select the resolution. This is set to 4K, which is fine for this, and then click save. This will bake out in a second. So this has baked everything out now. So if I take a look here, I have a diffuse texture that's come from Clo with my denim and my puckering and stitches and everything on it. Stitches in this situation I all set to texture, so make sure they're not set to OBJ or it'll get really big, I think. And then I have, metallic normal roughness maps all exported out of Clo. What I will use is actually my Substance export. I just retextured this in Substance because I got a lot more detail. But it's the same thing. Like I have 6 tiles for my denim, and here I have 6 tiles for the denim. Normal map, roughness map, and everything. So like either you use your textures from Clo or you can use your textures from Substance Painter. It doesn't matter. I'll link the video in the description of like how I textured this in Substance because I made a whole series for that. So that's our textures. If you want to then export this out of Clo, like I said, you need to set these up with each tile as one material. So select your tile, add a new material, call it 2, and then, assign that to these materials here. And then we're good. It's the same idea as what we just did in Blender, but I find it easier to do it in Blender. Let's bring everything into Daz. So here we are in Daz. We have our avatar. The rest of our scene is empty, and we can now import our text, import our mesh. So I'll show you what happens if we import this without fixing those materials. Let me go File, Import. We want to be in this folder, and I want to use the one that we just exported. So it was called. It was this one, thick centimeters blender open. So the scaling again, I want to make sure it's set to Daz Studio. 1 unit is 1 centimeter. The rest I can leave as it is and click accept. And now my clothing is imported. If there's an offset, if it's not in the right position, it's because you didn't click align, do not align foot to ground or whatever in Clo, so just check that from the start of the video. But now this is set up. If I select my object and I go down to surfaces, I can now drop this box down on the side, and I will have each of the materials that I can work with inside Daz. Like I said, I've not fixed this just to show you what the problem is. So if I now want to add into this like a color, the color or the texture will cover all of this material, which is the denim. So if I then were to add into here, if I drop this arrow down under base color and choose browse, I can open one of my textures and click OK. And in Clo or in Blender or something, you would get the UDIM workflow. So you would have 1001 to 1006 will get red across everything. But you see in Daz, this is not going to work. Let's do texture shader just to see. Set this back to white. So it's taken that one image and it's applied that one image over all of our tiles, which is not correct. So there you see that kind of huge problem here that like it's just projecting the same texture over all of the materials. So we don't want that. That's why we had to fix this in Blender before or in Clo. So I'll just delete that and I will import the correct one. So file, import. Correct materials is the one we just fixed in Blender, and I'm going to click open. Again, we can set the scaling of this to Daz. The rest of it we can leave as it is and click accept. And this is now imported with our color options, like our different colors for each material is applied. So this now is ready for us to set up the actual texturing. So if I go to texture shaded here, we can start to see what the textures are going to look like. So let's choose our object again, go to the surfaces tab, drop this down, and now we have 6 different materials to work with. So let's start with the first one. The base color is set to blue. We can shift this back to white so we don't have any, blue overlay. Under here, drop the arrow down. Click the drop down arrow next to base color, choose browse. Go to your first material tile. So like this is the first tile either from Clo or from Substance, whichever way. So if you've come from Clo, it would be this one. I've come from Substance, so it's this one. choose tile 1001, click open, and now that is applied to just that one material. Then we want to add in some roughness. So we can do that with the glossy roughness, I believe. So let's drop this arrow down here, go to browse. We're going to scroll down to our roughness exports, choose the first one. This is the roughness map, click open. There's no rendering happening, so we can't really see this just yet, but you can push up that glossy roughness if you want. And it will have an effect on how rough we see this material. I think you can just about see it in this preview mode. So push that roughness up. There's a layered weight on top of this that is going to add some shine, so you can tweak the value of this as you need to. We want to add in a bump map. So I have this from Substance. You might not have it from Clo. So this is our bump or our height. Click open. And then you have a slider here where we can increase that. Again, I don't think this is visible without being in render mode. And then all the way down, we want to add in a normal map underneath. So browse, choose tile 1001 again for the normal map. Click open. And that is automatically set to a value of 1. So if I look at this in render view, so drop your menu down and choose NVIDIA. That'll put it into like the correct like render mode. We can just preview quickly how this is starting to look. So this looks actually quite nice straight out. Again, if you add it into the layered weight, you'll see that it starts to get shiny. So you might want to drop that layered weight down. See how this roughness affects things. Push that back up. We could add a roughness map into the reflection as well. Same texture map. Just to see how we can make this look. But I think this looks quite nice and detailed, to be honest. We might want to increase the bump strength a bit. This is set to 10 right now. Let's see what happens if we push it up to 20. Yeah, we'll start to get some more of these wrinkles and folds in it. So find your value here at maybe about 10 so that we don't get this artifacts happening. And this texture is now important. The only other thing we want to add in is a metallic map, which goes right in at the top. And I'm going to choose this one here, tile 1001, and click open and push the metallicity all the way up. So now you see my buttons look metallic. They have reflection on them, they're shining. I have all the normal map details and everything from Substance, and this is looking quite good. So the idea now is to just repeat that process. So if I just go back into smooth shaded, actually no, let's do texture shaded as a preview, right? Let's do material 2. Set this to white again. Choose our second tile, so base color open, metallicity, browse, choose the metallic map, open, set this all the way up. Scroll down to our glossy roughness. We can check this roughness map, but this time tile number 2. I'll add the same into the reflective one. Then we're going to add the bump map again, so drop that down, click browse, go to your second tile for the bump, and then normal map as well. Down to the bottom, second tile for normal map, click open. We set this to a value of 10 on the other one, and I think for roughness and reflectivity it was 0.7 and 0.93. So now we have the same value as for the roughness and reflection. So I'll just look at this again under the render preview. This is looking fine. Now I'm just going to repeat this process quickly for the other for the other 4 texture slots. So that's now all set up those materials, and I can just check this in the render mode. And we can see that this is now set up. The texture looks really nice. The denim looks good. The only thing is we want to add a bit of opacity to this this fabric on the bottom. So this is under material 6, and the way that we would do that is with this cut out opacity. But if I just drop this down, it's going to make that whole material start to become transparent, which is not exactly what I want. So push that back up and we can use a texture map to do this for us. So the texture for this is going to look like this. So if I look, these are the pieces of my skirt here, and then this panel on the end is the transparent bit that we want to have on the bottom. To set up the opacity for this, everything in the white area is going to be completely opaque. We don't want that to be translucent in any way. And this grey bit on the side is where we're going to have transparency. So black will be completely transparent. Half grey will be like half transparent. And then white will be completely opaque. So it's between black and white that we use this value. And I'm going to insert this grey. So this is the image texture I'm going to work with, because that goes over this side of the image here where my where the base of my dress is. If I go into the cutout opacity and I search for that file, so just this opacity one here, so everything on the left is opaque, everything on the right is going to be transparent, and I click open, you'll see now how I have this nice kind of semi-transparent effect on the fabric underneath. I can see a bit of her skin underneath, I can see a bit of the fabric in the back, which looks way better than if we have nothing in there and this is fully opaque. So that's how you can control transparency, is with this cutout opacity here. And I think now we can just finish building up this scene. So you know now how to import everything into Blender, into Daz, sorry. You've set up those materials, we've adjusted those material slots. And the last thing to do now is just finalize this scene. So I'll just go into texture shaded. I'm going to go to smart content. I'm going to look under wardrobe. I'm going to add these boots. Genesis 8 version. So choose your character. I'm going to click to add these shoes. Shoes added. Let's go to... I'm going to add this future environment, call this Urban Future 5 it's called, and I'm going to use the iRay version and just double click to add this into the scene. Might take a minute. Yeah, now she's in the scene. I'm just gonna move this a bit on the x-axis. So if I go to parameters, I go to x, I can just slide this down a bit so she stood like more in the corner. And I'm just gonna bring it up a bit, because if we look now, her foot is not on the floor, it's floating. So let's bring this up by, let's say, 12 centimeters. Now she's standing on the floor, she's got her boots on. The last thing we would add is some hair, so I'm just gonna go to the hair option, and we can add this wet ponytail, Genesis 8. So I'll add that to her. And the one thing that we want to just check, so don't click render yet, especially if you've got a new version of Daz. Choose this hair, the ponytail, go to surfaces, under, like, you can select the whole thing so you've got all the surfaces, and then scroll down or search for transmission, and under transmitted color, I think, yeah, under transmitted color, set this to none. If you don't set this to none, it's going to crash. I don't know why, I don't know what's going on with that, but I just figured this out very recently. So if you're having a problem where this crashes every time you add hair, turn off transmitted color, and then we can now look at it in the render view. And this is what we get to start off with because we have no lighting. So I'm going to go back to my urban future and look under the lighting options. And here I can select some of these options. So let's try this guy. I'm going to set my camera, go to render settings, go to editor, go to general, and set this to like a 4:5. And then if I want to add a light in, now would be a good time to do it. So let's go back. Lights. Oh, and I'm going to add in a tube light. It's called a fluor tube. Let's raise it by about 2 meters and move it forward a bit. Look in smooth shaded. You can see I'm just adding a light like directly above her here, this kind of this light bulb here, and that should help us get some nice shadows on her face. So yeah, now this is all imported into Daz. There's a lot of tweaking to do with lights and cameras and stuff to get the look like I did, on the original version of this. But I think this is quite a nice workflow for you guys to produce some, high quality renders. When you've set everything up, just go to your render settings and hit the render button and you are good to go. So I hope you learned something in this process. I'm interested to see what you guys come up with, and yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks.